here we are. Take two for me, only take for you. Welcome to Eye on Marvel. My name is Peter Levi, and today we're going to dive into another MCU News Digest. Lots of stuff out there. In fact, right after I posted, we had one of the things in there confirmed, and another that needs some adjustment. I'll tackle both as we get to them. But in the meantime, just a reminder to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, yada yada, algorithm, etc., etc. You hear it all the time. It does matter, and of course, it's greatly appreciated. And of course, comments down below too. You can always have a conversation about these things. So we'll start off with the obvious thing, Shang-Chi. We had a bona fide trailer finally. Marketing for the film, that's pretty much the kickstart. We've had toy leaks previously, but nothing really official, nothing big. As for the trailer itself, I thought it was fine. I would have liked more, so it's not to me in the upper echelon of trailers. It didn't make me hyped for it, but it also wasn't terrible. It wasn't like the Sony trailers for SpiderMan, which are always god awful. So yeah, it was fine. What it emphasized was action, which makes sense. I thought the action looked fine. What I didn't get enough of, for me personally, was more of the acting. Not a lot of the humor, which I expect will be peppered throughout, was there either. You just have sort of the bus joke. So yeah, I want to see more of that because I'm not particularly jazzed about it. Shang-Chi's a character that I'd never heard of until 6 years ago. And as a story that they want to tell, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me. So I want to see more to draw in casuals and myself to get excited about it. I was curious what the response would be. And the only sort of really notable thing to me at the moment is the response from China. So we know, well, number one, that the Chinese market is hugely important to Disney and other companies, but in film, it's the second most important market out there. And we know that it's something that this film was partially targeted towards. So, what's the response been? And we've had some information about this. The direct went in and took a look, both at the likes, dislikes, and comments. And the response to the first trailer was not great. They had issues with the lead actor, and the commenters did not like the fact that there wasn't anyone from the area intimately involved with the production, not the director, etc., etc. Now, does this represent how it will be received there when it comes out? Of course not. It's simply interesting to note that has been the initial response because the MCU is very, very popular there. Now, I don't expect a huge amount of marketing for Shang-Chi until after Black Widow comes out. So I wouldn't expect anything else until after that in July. Other than things like maybe posters or something like that. And then we'll really see it ramp up. Yeah, and I'm dying to know how this will do. I've been quite pessimistic simply because martial arts films historically, as in the last 20-25 years, have not done particularly well. And you've taken a pretty unknown lead actor. Now that can work out fantastic for you or it cannot. You just never know. But it means that actor is not specifically drawing in casual fans. Fans will be coming in for the other things around it. So I'll be curious to see how it does. Is it sort of Ant-Man levels of success, or is it big? I don't think it will be Black Panther big, although a lot of people throw that comparison around. But I'd be perfectly happy if it was Captain Marvel levels of success. That'd be fantastic. But we'll see. I don't know. It's too early to say. What I did do, though, was take a look at Google Trends. I do this quite frequently to sort of assess relative engagement because, as I brought up many times before, the Marvel space, as in the people who cover it, they tend to have a hive mind. They tend to like all the same things, dislike all the same things. But broadly speaking, they are rah, hooray for anything that the MCU does. So they're not a very good guide for how something is performing. On the other hand, the algorithm for Google Trends, well, it's just a tracking mechanism. It doesn't have that prejudice. So comparing it to other Marvel IP, previously, Shang-Chi just didn't really register. Just about everything was ahead of it in interest from either a minimal amount or a very large amount. So initially I compared it to the Disney Plus shows that are currently out and the ones that are about to come. So WandaVision, Falcon, Loki, and Hawkeye. And there it does not chart at all. It simply doesn't compare to any of those. So instead I compared it to She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, and so on. Sort of things that are a little ways off, that are more obscure. And here it was sort of in the midst. You can look at the chart and the thing up until the trailer where it spiked up. Now that spike compared to the stuff I put in the first chart is non-existent, but compared to the other obscure stuff, it is a welcome jump. So it's something that Marvel can hope to build off of. You know, you've grabbed people's attention, now you want to hold it, and I'm curious to see what they'll do to do that. It seems like the emphasis will be largely on the fighting. And I'm curious to see, is that enough to draw people in? I just don't know. Next up, Secret Invasion. So we had two casting drops, both of these from the trades, one from Variety, one from The Hollywood Reporter. The first was that Emilia Clarke has signed on for an unknown role. And then that Olivia Colman has signed on again for an unknown role. Olivia Colman is an excellent actress. I've seen her in a number of things. I don't know what role she'll have, but I'm quite confident whatever they give her, she will do well. But what that is, remains to be seen. As for Emilia Clarke, clearly someone at Marvel is a big fan of Game of Thrones. She's the third ex-cast member to wind up in Marvel, after Kit Harington and Richard Madden. Just like Kit Harington, her career outside of Game of Thrones has generally been disastrous. Her films have flopped or disappointed to the point where, just like Harington, you had to wonder, was Game of Thrones just the perfect circumstance for them? And their draw as an actor, or their ability as an actor, just isn't quite enough to engage popular interest outside of that. With Clarke, I've never been fully swayed by her acting, but it's not me that has to be persuaded. Joe Casual fan has to be engaged and excited for it. Mikey Sutton did speculate that she might be Abigail Brand. Certainly she's close enough to the traditional look for her, so she could be. But he was speculating, so who knows? But that was the main Secret Invasion stuff. I'm still disinterested in the show. The whole premise of it doesn't interest me at all. Secret Skrulls or whatever. When I was younger, that might have interested me. At the moment, particularly given the heroes that are likely to be involved, it doesn't do much for me. But that can change. SpiderMan No Way Home. So we had a big scoop from Sutton on this one. He dropped it. I think he dropped it on small screen on Friday, but I could be mistaken about when. But according to sources, either in No Way Home or the sequel, Aunt May, pardon me, fighting a sneeze. Yeah, I survived. Will die in one or the other. So I guess essentially what this is they want their Uncle Ben moment without having Uncle Ben to do it. Now this might seem a little bit redundant because Tony Stark dies in Endgame, so there's a significant death for Peter Parker, but that death doesn't specifically carry with it an evolution of character for him. When we see him in Far From Home, he's really not that different from how he was in Homecoming. So presumably, Aunt May's death will lead to a change in attitude in him from going from an adolescent to an adult in some way, or at least that's the hope. Otherwise, why do it? So yeah, it's interesting that Sutton doesn't know which film it's going to be in, and he added an interesting comment in the scoop, which is that the script for the film has changed quite a bit due to both the delay because of the pandemic, but also just creative decisions. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that happens and how it's dealt with. The other bit of Spider-Man news we had from Geeks Worldwide's Casey Walsh, who's been pretty reliable. He implied in a tweet that the MCU will merge with the previous Sony films, and this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I wonder if it's just casual language in a social media post that lends itself to that interpretation. We'll have to see, but I don't see much benefit in Feige doing that. Like, the Sony films are a mixed bag at best, so why bother? But just to wait and see. Speaking of Mikey, and there's a lot of Mikey in this, he added to his Wolverine 2, the sequel film, scoop. He mentioned previously that he'll take on the Patch identity, or at least live in that sort of role in Madripoor, and he dropped that the villain Roughhouse, who's Asgardian, will appear in it. Now, I don't think anyone is super excited about Roughhouse one way or the other, but it's another figure from that early run in Madripoor who is apparently supposed to appear. Now, I would take casting for a sequel film with a grain of salt. I mean, casting in terms of characters, not actors. But, it does fit the theme. Next up, this was interesting. He said that two things here. Ghost Rider's destination, whether it's a film or a Disney Plus show, is going to depend on how Blade performs. That makes sense to me. Not only did the Nicolas Cage movies not perform particularly well, but yeah, I wouldn't be necessarily convinced that Ghost Rider is what you can hang your hat on for a film. But he also said, the other interesting thing he said is there's internal discussions about having Zack Snyder direct Ghost Rider. I find this unlikely, not that they had discussions, but that they would do it. Snyder is very much a visual director who has his own ideas. His ideas, I think, are generally not particularly good outside of the visual realm. But if you gave him a good script and restrictions, he might be able to produce a good Ghost Rider film. But Marvel has leaned very heavily into largely unknown directors or lesser known directors. And Zach would cost you a bunch. So, I consider that pretty unlikely, especially since you're talking about a hypothetical director for a hypothetical IP based on the performance of another one. That is a long chain of if, ands, or maybes, right? Our final main thing from Sutton, he says that there's discussions about a Daughters of the Dragon Disney Plus series. So for those who don't know, that's Misty Knight and why am I blanking? Jessica Henwick's character from Iron Fist. Oh my goodness. Anyway, the two characters, they're both associated characters to Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Colleen Wing, there we go. Brain block over. Now, this was something that was floated in the fandom back when Marvel Netflix was still a thing. And he says not only is it being considered, but it would be considered with the same actors. And now, Mikey tends to put a positive spin on any actor who isn't Finn Jones, like down the line of Marvel. I'm not a big fan of what we got out of Simone Missick in her performance. Now, granted, the writing for her character was terrible, so maybe there's a good actress, buried beneath what we got there. But she's also an older actress, and you're looking at a show that would be a long way down the line. This is not something that could come anytime soon. So while Jessica Henwick is quite young, so that's not a big deal for Simone. I think you'd be better off with a younger actress, just like I think you'd be better off with a younger actor for Luke Cage. So could they have an interest in this project? I think maybe. I don't think it would come anytime soon. And I'm not sure using those actors really helps you any. I've thought pretty much since the beginning that Sutton's enthusiasm for the former actors within Marvel Entertainment is bigger than Feige's. And I don't think there's any cachet in just recycling them all. Charlie Cox, cachet there. If you went to John Bernthal, there's cachet. So for some of them, it makes sense. But these are not actors anyone is clamoring for specifically for those portrayals. Even though some people clearly, were happy with them. You can very easily get different actors in those roles and then do something that's more unique to the MCU. Next up, that hashtag show. Santos is the writer. So he says that Daredevil, Jessica Jones, The Punisher, and Kingpin will be appearing in the MCU with the same Netflix actors. That echoes stuff that Sutton and others have said. But he says that Kingpin specifically will appear in the Echo show, and also perhaps cameo in Hawkeye, which I've never heard before. He also says Iron Fist and Luke Cage will be completely recast. I would agree with that assessment. Unfortunately for Santos, we just have no reason to specifically believe he has sources as yet. So, it's interesting, but we can't put too much weight on it. Then we had a Sinverso purported scoop where they said that Hercules and the Olympians were going to be introduced, specifically Zeus and Ares. This information came from someone who worked on the Eternals and Loki, but he didn't know which one it would be in. The idea of Hercules appearing is a very old idea. Back in October of 2019, Daniel said a Disney Plus series was coming. Lords of the Long Box, back when they did scoops with The Black Knight, in July of 2019, said he would show up in Thor 4. There's reasons to think that might be accurate. I'll get to that in a sec. And Sutton has echoed similar things, at least about Hercules getting a Disney Plus show. So what happened right after I posted this is we had heard via 4chan that Russell Crowe, the mighty Russell Crowe, fighting around the world, was going to be Zeus. And that was confirmed very shortly after that by the man himself. So, and that's for Thor 4. So this specific article did not mention Thor 4. It said Eternals or Loki. But certainly the character is correct. And that could lend credence that we'll get Hercules as well. We'll have to see. But yeah, I actually think that's not a bad choice, Russell Crowe as Zeus. Although since it's a Taika Waititi film, I don't know if you're really going to get a lot of mileage out of that. Like, he had Carl Urban, who's a fantastic actor, and gave him absolutely nothing to do and killed him off in Ragnarok. It was a tremendous waste. He'd be such a great asset to the MCU. Now, Urban may have had something to do with that, but still, it's such a waste. So, with Crowe, I don't think Crowe's as good an actor, incidentally, but someone who could certainly draw interest. And I just have a feeling Taika's just going to murder him immediately, and it's just going to be like a funny one-off, and you're not going to see him again. And that would make me sad, but we'll have to see. Sorry, Windows wants me to update things. Next up, a little bit about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I haven't speculated at all about who the power broker is. I don't really care. Most of the speculation is that it's Sharon Carter, and Charles Murphy has echoed that belief. Maybe, I don't know what the point would be. People generally have been saying, oh, she's a Skrull, so it's meant to lead into Secret Invasion. And I'm like, sure. That would certainly make it a more understandable decision if it wasn't the real Sharon Carter, because obviously she'd have no reason to do that. But yeah, no, I just don't care. And then I was taking a look at, the Google Trends. Yeah, so one of the interesting things in the Nielsen ratings is that when you look at trends, WandaVision is very, very high when compared to other Marvel IP. And for Falcon, it's about halfway down in terms of, and so what Google Trends is a social media chatter. So in terms of chatter, nowhere near the same impact. Partially, I'm sure, because WandaVision used so many mystery boxes. But what about hard numbers? That's obviously the much more important number. So I mentioned last time that WandaVision, since its final episode, has just sort of had a steep downward dive, or at least it did initially. It went down to 11th in its first week after it finished, and to 16th. It did rebound a little bit to 15th in the last numbers I saw from Nielsen. So for Falcon, and this was the other thing that got updated right after I posted, its first week, it was 6th overall. Second for original programming, but 6th among all streaming service programs. And by all, Nielsen covers Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon. And that seems surprisingly low to me. After I put this out, new Nielsen numbers came out, and they had, between the first 2 episodes, Falcon being number 1 for original programming, and I believe it's 3rd overall, which is actually quite good. So somewhere between when or after the first episode dropped and whenever they put in the numbers for 1 and 2, um, that the viewing hours went up. And I'm really curious to see if that continues, because at least in terms of social media chatter, that's not well echoed. So it'll be interesting to see. One final note about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There was a surprising article in Collider, and this is surprising just because it was in Collider, criticizing the Flag Smashers. Now, Collider is very much in the rah-rah MCU can do no wrong camp for the most part. So to see any sort of criticism at all was kind of surprising. And while the article itself, I think, is a mixed bag, some of the stuff in it is good, some of it is not. The general point that the villains are not well developed is absolutely on target, and they make the absolute correct deduction that Kellyman is not a particularly interesting or redeemable character, despite the fact that both Falcon and Torres have been like, she's awesome. So I'll be interested to see what happens to the character at the end of that episode, and how people such as those at Collider react to it. Next up, so last time we talked about Sony's deal with Netflix. Now they have made a TV deal or a streaming deal with Disney Plus. This is US only, just like the Netflix deal. It will allow Spider-Man to appear on Disney Plus, not forever, but for the terms of the deal. And it also gets some of the Sony backlog onto that service as well. This doesn't, I think, really impact anything. It doesn't immediately eliminate the possibility of, say, a Sony show on Amazon or anything like that. It seems to be largely a cash injection for Sony and for Marvel, at least in the US anyway. They get their Spider-Man films on the service. Next up, Charles Murphy did an AMA. I'm not going to comb through all of this because there's honestly no big revelations at all. It's just confirming things we've heard before, confirming his opinions, confirming what he doesn't know. Pardon me, but you can go through that and enjoy it if you're interested. A little bit more substantive. We had another Sutton Q&A. So almost all of this is repetition. I'm going to look for the most interesting things here. So I mentioned before that Sutton has a very hard time giving up on old characters and old continuities. He still thinks Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will be canon. That he hasn't surrendered. But he used to think Netflix would be canon as well. He's given up on that, even though he thinks most of the actors are coming over, which we've seen before. This is a weird one. So he had an Excalibur scoop. It was going to be a Disney Plus show way back, fall of 2019. And Black Knight was going to be their leader, which is not normally how it is. It's normally Captain Britain. One of the weird things here is he repeated that, but then he said that Captain Britain will have an integral role in Black Knight movies. So is he saying there's an Excalibur show and a Black Knight series of films? That would be incredibly strange to have him lead a show and then have his own films. I'm not saying it's impossible, because that's certainly what the scenario with Wolverine looks like, but that is a hell of a lot to lean on Kit Harington in a role no one's seen him in a character he's popular, but he's kind of a C-grade hero, and an actor whose films have never done well. It just seems like a lot to put on the shoulders of a guy like that. And at least in the one case, you have a team to support him. But yeah, so I have a feeling there might have been some lost in translation from a live Q&A versus what was actually intended for full information. Let's see, anything else super exciting here? So he says he thinks there'll be a second season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but it'll be called Captain America and the Winter Soldier. That certainly makes sense if there is a second season, although it's indicative that Marvel does not have enough faith in Falcon as Captain America to give him his own movie. It's not surprising. It is pretty similar in the comics, where he can't support a comic that way either. So I guess they're being realists, but it does show maybe a cynical understanding of brand to be like, couldn't do it at the box office. The final thing he said that was interesting is he said Brother Voodoo will be part of Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is a group. So the last time that I'm aware of that he talked about the character was in December. where he thought he would get his own show. But there was no discussion of him specifically being a member of the group. Now, I might be misremembering things, maybe not, and Sutton has said the membership of that group has flipped around a lot, but I don't remember him being part of it. So now I should bring up, we need full disclosure for Sutton since we bring him up a lot. Sometimes there are misses. Way back in a Q&A he did in July, he said that the Namor rights were back at Marvel and that a film was in development. Neither of those things are true. And the last time he was asked about Namor, he said he hadn't heard news in quite a while. If you haven't heard news in quite a while, there certainly wasn't a movie in development. And I can tell you, the rights for Namor are not back at Marvel. Actually, I have an article on the way about that. You can check that out. So we had a bunch of stuff from 4chan. There were two related to Quake and Secret Invasion. And both of them had the same basic point. That Quake will be recast. It will not be Chloe Bennett. And will appear as kind of a tertiary character. One of them compared it to Jimmy Woo. The other one compared it to Maria Hill. There is a slight difference there. But yeah, not a main character. Not really a secondary character, but a tertiary character. To me, that's only really interesting in the sense that there are people like Sutton who believe that it will be Chloe Bennett who will be brought in. Now, Mikey thinks it's with her continuity. Most other people who are on the Quake train are like, well, without continuity, rebooted, but we'll see. The other thing the second poster said is that Agents of Atlas is simply something being talked about that it's not firmly committed to yet. That seems more realistic to me personally, that the Marvel would want to see how Shang-Chi does before committing to a team up that's centered on him. But have to wait and see. It is 4chan. Odds of this stuff being real are very small. So speaking of 4chan, somebody claims that Rachel Taylor, who played Hellcat in the Jessica Jones series, will be brought back to play Hellcat in an episodic Disney Plus series. As far as I know, She-Hulk is the only episodic Disney Plus series that would sort of qualify for that. Although that's not what they specifically say here. They just say episodic. Is it possible? Maybe. You couldn't include her Netflix background, though, since it's Jessica Jones season 2 and 3 are just god-awful and don't make a whole lot of sense compared to the first season. I like Rachel Taylor. She's a good actress. She could have been an interesting Hellcat. But I'm a little leery in saying Feige just wants to recycle all these characters. At a certain point, it gets kind of absurd. But we'll have to wait and see. Second last thing from 4chan. So this person says there will be a Defenders movie featuring Doctor Strange, Hulk, Scarlet Witch, Ghost Rider, maybe Thor, and maybe America Chavez. So it's a weird team. This is not the first time we've heard this basic idea. Once upon a time, Sutton also said a Defenders team was coming, although the lineup was slightly different, based very much on the 70s iteration of. But yeah, I mean, could this be possible? Maybe, although I think you'd probably rather have Doctor Strange on the Avengers. But we'll have to wait and see. Next up, this is our final 4chan. Ooh. So this guy talked about a number of things. And the main ones I want to pick out on is it mentions that the Greek gods will be introduced in Thor, and that they believe Russell Crowe is playing Zeus. This was then confirmed. So it's probably worth taking a look at their whole Thor 4 post. Idris Elba will return. I think most of us sort of assume that. Gore, that's Christian Bale's character, will kill the Grandmaster, Lady Sif, Korg, all the actors. Fake Thor, fake Loki, etc. And it's the fake character dying is supposed to be very comical. We've heard about Lady Sif dying before, but not the Grandmaster, and certainly not Korg, who's quite popular. Sadly, no Valkyrie in there. Oh well. And he describes a scene where Gore defeats Thor, and then he's brought back to health by Lady Sif. Maybe. And so he also talked about Loki, Idris Elba coming back for that. I think that's been kind of essentially confirmed by the teaser. Said Hela and Kang will make brief appearances. Sure. Richard E. Grant is playing the Possessor in Loki. So there's a number of possessors, but I think he means the one who is an elder of the universe, like the Grandmaster. Hawkeye, he says Clint Barton retires for good at the end of the show. We've heard this before. Not from everywhere, but we have heard that before. Two secondary antagonists. AIM is the main one, and then the Swordsman and Taskmaster are the secondary ones. We haven't heard, at least I don't remember hearing about Taskmaster being in the show before. Although he's an appropriate sort of villain for someone like Hawkeye. U.S. Agent, so John Walker is also in the show. He's offered to join U.S. Agent's team, but refuses, but Kate Bishop joins instead. This seems weird to me, because presumably Kate Bishop will be going to the Young Avengers, but... She-Hulk, he didn't have anything really new to say. Yeah, nothing else particularly new. So normally I would have said, just fan speculation, but since he got Zeus right, there could be some plausibility there. Oh, and I'm a liar. There's one more 4chan. This is on She-Hulk. This is from someone who claims they do previs. Again, though, there's nothing really here. He just talks about an action scene between She-Hulk and the Abomination, so... You can read it if that interests you, but in terms of substance, it doesn't add anything. And then we had a few Daniel rumors that were just repeating popular stuff you could hear elsewhere, so nothing too exciting. So that wraps up our news. I have just a ton of things in the hopper in progress. I have an article on Sony Marvel stuff. I have the Universal Rights stuff for the Hulk and Namor. And more besides that, along, of course, with the usual stuff. And tomorrow, the final episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier drops. Have a review for that. I'll presumably be on small screen Friday night, which I'm recording on Thursday, so it'll be tomorrow night for me. Although I don't know what the hell we'll be talking about. Stuff. So yeah, lots coming up. At any rate, enough rambling. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we will see you all next time once I find my mouse.